The U.S. has spent the last decade working on the 6th generation fighter, the Next Generation Air Dominance Program, or NGAD. It's set to enter service in 2030, and it'll blow every fighter that China, Russia, or any other American enemy has out of the skies. Find out why the U.S. enemies are scared of the new F-22 replacement in today's episode of the Infographic Show. China's new J-31, the first 5th-generation stealth fighter in its aerial fleet, was recently photographed engaging in a series of test flights, and it's supposed to be the People's Liberation Army Air Force, or PLAAF's, answer to the Lockheed Martin F-22 and the F-35. But what Beijing didn't anticipate is how much the NGAD is going to blow those old planes away. As China works to get its first 5th-generation fighter airborne, let's look at the reasons why this next-gen program is causing shockwaves amongst America's enemies, starting with its network capabilities, which incorporates an entire aerial network into a single fighter platform. Unlike most fighters, which are standalone aircraft supported by technicians on the ground, NGAD is set to be a connected family of systems that include both the main fighter jet and a series of unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, that the jet's pilot can control at the touch of a button. These UAVs are being dubbed Collaborative Combat Aircraft, or CCAs, with the United States Air Force ordering 1,000 of these CCAs, along with its order of 200 NGAD fighter jets. Each NGAD fighter will be joined by at least 2 CCAs while carrying out counter-air missions, air-to-air strikes, and attacking ground-based targets. These CCAs are at the cutting edge of technology. Their development started in 2024, with the U.S. planning to invest up to $6 billion into this technology between 2024 and 2028. Each CCA will be unmanned and have a degree of autonomy. The CCA can be programmed with a mission objective before it takes to the skies, alongside the NGAD. Each CCA will use AI-powered software to drive this autonomy, with that AI also giving the CCA the ability to communicate with whichever NGAD it's paired with. The result, the U.S. Air Force claims, will be a network of planes that offer a pilot increased situational awareness, much better survivability, and a wealth of attacking options while they're in the sky. The CCAs can carry weapons, allowing them to fire on other aircraft and take part in the NGAD's air-to-ground missiles. They can also gather intelligence and provide surveillance over a larger patch of the skies than a single fighter would be able to see. Add to that an array of sensors which will provide early warnings for the NGAD pilot about incoming threats, and the CCAs will help the NGAD become better than any other fighter jet at evading missiles. CCAs may even be loaded with electronic warfare equipment, such as radar jammers, that will give the NGAD even more of an advantage against America's enemies. When combined with CCAs, NGAD essentially becomes the main part of a network of aerial assets, all operating as a single platform, which spells trouble for an opposing fighter pilot. Rather than having to take on a skilled pilot in an F-22, which is a daunting task already, the enemy fighter will have to deal with CCAs that can help the NGAD to evade its missiles. It'll be dealing with radar jamming issues if the CCA is used for electronic warfare, and it may even be fired upon before it ever gets in range of the NGAD. And even if an enemy pilot shoots a CCA down, he'll still have another CCA and the NGAD itself to handle. The U.S. is essentially creating a 3 versus 1 situation for any enemy fighter that might try to confront the NGAD, giving the system a clear advantage over anything that China or Russia has to offer. That's assuming that an enemy can even find the NGAD, as it's set to be the stealthiest fighter jet ever made. The F-22 is often regarded as the stealthiest fighter in the skies, with a radar cross-section that is barely the size of a marble. While this doesn't make it impossible to spot via radar systems, the plane is so fast that any system that detects this marble won't be able to keep track of it for long. Add to that a host of weapon systems that allow the F-22 to engage enemy targets from outside of visible range, and you have a juggernaut of stealth capabilities. But the NGAD is going to take things to a whole new level. The NGAD is a top-secret project, with the new stealth tech being kept carefully under wraps. However, some snippets of information have leaked, with the consensus being that the NGAD is going to achieve a level of stealth that makes it invisible across the traditional radar spectrum. That means America's enemies won't be tracking a marble, they won't be able to see anything at all. How is this possible? Thermal cloaking. A concept that's often relegated to the world of science fiction, the idea behind thermal cloaking is that the technology manipulates the heat signature of the object being cloaked. In the NGAD, that heat would come from things like the jet's engines or its missiles. The heat around the object is redirected, usually with the help of artificially made materials, to essentially render the object invisible to thermal sensors. In short, the NGAD will be capable of controlling its own heat signatures while it's in the sky, meaning an enemy can't use thermal imaging technology, such as infrared sensors, to detect it. That doesn't mean the NGAD will be completely invisible. It's still a physical jet with a family of UAVs around it. That can be seen with the naked eye. However, being invisible on radar and difficult, if not impossible, to detect via infrared means that the jet has a clear advantage over its enemies. It'll be able to sneak up on rival fighters in the skies, as well as approach ground and water-based targets without being detected until it's too late. And remember, the F-22 already has weapon systems that can strike a target from beyond visual range. If those systems are built into the NGAD and its CCAs, you end up with a new fighter jet platform that is undetectable beyond direct visual sight and capable of destroying a target before it's possible for that visual sight to be achieved. Speaking of materials, that's another area where the NGAD looks set to jump ahead of the competition. Where most aircraft still predominantly use metal for their structures, it seems that the NGAD is using composite materials for its entire frame. Key among these materials are ceramic matrix composites, or CMCs. Traditionally, CMCs usually have two parts: a reinforcement material that provides whatever quality is required, such as strength and flexibility, and a matrix material which acts like an adhesive, holding the whole thing together. The key here is that the reinforcement and matrix materials are usually different. That's not the case with the CMCs that look set to be used in the NGAD. Both parts of this material are made using the same type of ceramic, though there may be additional secondary fibers included in the CMC. The result is a material that is different from both conventional ceramics and the high-performance metal alloys typically used in fighter jets. The NGAD is going to get the best of both of those worlds. Its CMCs will be hard and will remain stable at high temperatures, reducing the risk of warping when the jet is moving at high speeds. It'll also be light, super light. CMCs are about a third the weight of nickel alloys, for instance, meaning the NGAD will likely have greater maneuverability than the F-22, as well as being able to carry more weapons as the jet itself is light enough to accommodate more munitions. Add the ability of CMCs to maintain a high mechanical strength while maintaining fracture toughness at high temperatures and resistance to thermal shocks, and you have a material that truly represents the next generation in fighter jet construction. So now, not only does a rival fighter jet pilot have to deal with an entire networked system of aerial assets all at once, but those assets are lighter and faster than their plane. And even more worrying for America's enemies is that CMCs aren't going to be restricted to NGAD. GE Aviation is already working on plans to incorporate the material into the F-35's design. The NGAD's lower weight and improved speeds will make it a terror in the skies for America's enemies. However, weight isn't the only contributor to the 6th-generation fighter's speed. There's something else: the next-generation adaptive propulsion, or NGAP system. Working in collaboration with the United States Air Force, Pratt & Whitney has already completed construction of an NGAP prototype, dubbed the XA-103, that it has successfully evaluated and is now preparing for ground testing. NGAP is all about enhancing performance, with Pratt & Whitney claiming this will be key to enabling future air dominance capabilities. The new technology is being designed to ensure greater fuel efficiency, meaning NGAD will be able to stay in the air longer and fly further than a 5th-generation fighter while using less fuel, and advanced survivability. The company also says that the new propulsion system will provide robust power, and even comments that the propulsion system will also offer thermal management, further enhancing the stealth performance of the fighter. Beyond that, there are few details about the NGAP's capabilities. However, some hints come in the form of comments made by John R. Sneeden, who is the Air Force's Lifecycle Management Center's propulsion director. Sneeden has been working on the Adaptive Engine Transition Program, or AETP, which focused on developing a new engine for the F-35. Why does this matter in context of the NGAD? Sneeden points out that while the NGAP system will be different from AETP, the technology baseline is essentially the same. In other words, many of the technological advancements made via the AETP will be implemented into the NGAD's new propulsion system. The AETP program has resulted in the development of advanced composite materials, including the previously mentioned CMCs and thermal management advancements that will boost the NGAD stealth credentials. This all leads to a propulsion system that makes the NGAD faster and keeps it in the air longer than any jet produced by America's enemies. The goal is to ensure the NGAD can achieve supercruise speeds above the Mach 1.7 achieved by the F-22 Raptor. Supercruise is the term used for a fighter jet's ability to fly at supersonic speeds without engaging afterburners, which are a giveaway of a jet's position because of the heat generated by the engines. If NGAD can supercruise at Mach 2, this means it can fly at twice the speed of sound without revealing itself. So NGAD's going to have an engine that allows it to fly faster while making better use of its fuel, and it'll be able to stay in the skies for longer, which should also result in it having a greater range than any Chinese or Russian fighter jet. And we haven't even mentioned its weapons loadout. We only have a handful of details about the likely weapons for the NGAD, but all are terrifying to America's enemies. It's expected that the jet's armaments will include the Raytheon AIM-260 Joint Advanced Tactical Missile, or JATM, which is currently under development. The missile is capable of moving at speeds of up to Mach 5, more than twice the speeds that China's J-31 is believed to be capable of reaching. In other words, the JATM can catch a high-speed 5th-generation fighter with no issues, and the missile also has a range of 120 miles, allowing it to be fired from beyond visual range, and it'll include both an inertial guidance system and an active radar that helps it to home in on its target. Worse yet, for the US enemies, it's a missile that's been specially designed to tackle the latest Chinese fighters. Brigadier General Anthony Genetempo, who used to lead the US Air Force's weapons program, says that the JATM has a range greater than the AMRAAM and different capabilities on board to go after the specific threat set, referring to new Chinese fighters like the J-31. That brand new missile is going to be backed by the Northrop Grumman Stand-in Attack Weapon, or SIA. Little is known about this weapon, other than it being a missile designed to strike relocatable surface targets, which could include ships and land-based air defense systems. With the SIA on board, the NGAD becomes a more versatile fighter, with the jet capable of tackling both aerial targets and practically anything on the ground. Those weapon systems will come to the fore if the NGAD is capable of reaching the 60,000-foot altitude at which the F-22 can operate. Being capable of flying at this altitude was key to the F-22 Raptor being able to shoot down the Chinese high-altitude balloon that was in the news in early 2023. For the NGAD, being able to reach 60,000 feet would mean that its JATM and SIA missiles could fly much farther than if they were launched from 30,000 to 40,000 foot altitudes achieved by the Chinese and Russian fighter jets. The result? A 6th-generation fighter that can fly so high that other jets can't reach it and can fire missiles that hit targets in the air or on the ground without anybody ever achieving visual confirmation that the jet was even in the area. There's only one thing that could hold the NGAD back: its cost. America's new 6th-generation fighter is projected to cost about $300 million per unit, likely without accounting for the CCAs that'll accompany it, which is around 3 times as much as the new F-35. "We can only afford it in small numbers," said Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall when asked about the NGAD in July 2024. "These prohibitive costs mean the Air Force won't be able to fill the skies with NGAD fighters and their CCAs. But it may not have to. With its advanced weapon systems, unprecedented levels of stealth, new propulsion system, and the likely ability to hit altitudes only seen before by the F-22, the NGAD is a clear threat to America's enemies. While they focus on the 5th generation, the US is moving into the future with a fighter jet that can take out anything China or Russia can field." But what do you think about the top-secret NGAD program? Does it represent the next generation of fighter jets, or is it an expensive project that is doomed to fail? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now go watch military tech that'll be a nightmare for China and Russia, or check out this other video instead.